Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs is a follow-up to the insanely popular Amnesia Dark Descent that seemed to cause the resurge of horror games as a genre in video games. The developers behind the game were Frictional Games, a small company out of Sweden. Their first series of games, Penumbra, really set the style of gameplay Frictional was going for. The games borrowed a lot of point-and-click adventure games like Monkey Island or King's Quest in the fact that the game had an inventory system where you could try to use certain items on other items for specific outcomes. This was used in all three Penumbra games and Amnesia, which was the spiritual successor to Penumbra. Although Penumbra was a great series of games, it never seemed particularly scary. But when Frictional released Amnesia Dark Descent in 2010, they seemed to really perfect the art of horror gameplay. The story was superb, with great atmosphere and terrifying monsters. The game was very unpredictable, and as one of the first really popular games with no way to defend yourself, it was a great introduction to a whole genre that few had tapped into. On its own merits, the game was great, and Frictional had won many awards and bagged high review scores. After 3 years of waiting, Frictional was ready to make their next announcement. While at first it sounded like there would be no new Amnesia game, it was announced that the developers, the Chinese Room, who had created Dear Esther previously, would be making Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, a spiritual successor to the Dark Descent. A Machine for Pigs takes place in 1899 London, 70 years after the events of Dark Descent. You will notice more modern inventions like phonographs that have voices recorded on them, automobiles, and of course the large meatpacking factory ran and owned by our main character Oswald Mandis. We join Mandis at a low point in his life. He had just lost his wife in a disastrous expedition in Mexico, and he has been sick for months. But while sick, Mandis has been working on something terrible, and seems his children may have fallen victim. In the game, you go through your house, finding secret compartments where you carried out your experiments and slowly realize what you had been up to. You leave your house and actually get to be outside in a larger area, downtown London, something we hadn't seen in Dark Descent. The scale of A Machine for Pigs is much more believable in the fact that you must walk through town in order to get to your factory and back again. You piece your past together using diary entries, phonograph recordings, and your partner trying to call and explain what is happening. You must sneak past the mutated pig monsters and gain access to the machine to free your children. The story is much more involved and brilliant than this, and leads to an amazing climax that tops most scenes in video games, but I would hate to spoil it for anyone. There are a lot of changes in A Machine for Pigs, some that people will appreciate, and some that die-hard fans may find frustrating. The Chinese Room decided to do away with Frictional's inventory system, which makes puzzles incredibly easy in the game. At times you may have to pick stuff up to solve a puzzle, to put the cogs in a machine, or even to refill a gas tank in order to move a truck. Without an inventory system, we lose laudanum, tinderboxes, and fuel for the lantern. Your light doesn't really ever go out. The new lantern actually is one of the few complaints I have about this game, because anytime something scary is about to happen, your light will automatically flicker, which kind of ruins the surprise, but does add to the atmosphere of the game. The lack of these elements does make the game much easier, but it also makes it more of an experience than a game. I always felt like the Dark Descent and the Penumbra games were way over-padded by puzzles and inventory management. Running around in the dark was more frustrating than scary, and the mental condition mechanic caused motion sickness for many players, and I feel we are better without it in A Machine for Pigs. At the end of the day, what we can get from A Machine for Pigs is a very engaging story that can be experienced in one sitting. It took me about 4 hours to finish the game, and I only died once just to see what would happen. I truly loved my time with this game and highly recommend it to any fans of the horror genre. It actually works really well as an introduction to Amnesia, so if you're craving more, check out the Dark Descent or the Penumbra trilogy. The game's design is lovely, doing a great job recreating the last years of the 1800s. The music is always appropriate and can create some truly terrifying moments. And of course, the pig beasts are a very interesting threat that are much deeper than a mutated slab of bacon. The Chinese Room have definitely proved that they were up to the challenge in making an Amnesia game, and this has gotten me very excited for their upcoming game, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. But for now, Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs is a wonderfully dark story I recommend you pick up for $20.